At issue this Sunday morning, Pennsylvania finally got a budget, but the larger funding fights are far from over. Why it took so long and what's ahead. I'm talking to local lawmakers from both sides of the aisle. Plus, the Epstein files. Congress votes to compel the Justice Department to release the material, and the president signed it. Ahead, what those files could contain and the message this move sends to survivors. And avoiding travel headaches. We're helping you plan your trip so you can avoid the worst traffic on the roads over the busy Thanksgiving holiday.
NBC10 at Issue starts now.
I'm Lauren Mayk. Welcome to NBC10 at Issue. This year's battle over Pennsylvania's budget finally came to an end this month. Lawmakers agreed on a spending plan more than 4 months behind schedule. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro put his signature on the budget shortly after it passed through the divided legislature. That allowed billions of dollars to start flowing to critical organizations across the Commonwealth. But the governor will have to propose his next budget a few months from now.
I said at the outset of this budget process that I was absolutely certain about one thing that would be in the final budget document, and that is compromise. That it would show that everyone was going to have to give a little bit and understand the perspectives of others in order to deliver a whole lot for the people of Pennsylvania.
Joining us now in studio is Pennsylvania State Representative Jordan Harris. He's a Democrat representing parts of Philadelphia, and he is also the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let's talk about this budget. It got done. It finally got done. Why did it take so long to get here?
I like how you said finally got done.
Yeah, well, it took a while.
So it did. The governor did his budget address back in February, and through that time, through budget hearings and through negotiations, we began to work on a document that we would feel represented Pennsylvania's values. And look, we do have a divided government. You have a governor that's a Democrat, a House that's controlled by us, the Democratic Party, and then you have my colleagues over in the Republican Party who control the Senate. And so that does mean that we have to find consensus to get a document done. And, you know, sometimes, unfortunately, it does take a little bit of time. But what I can tell you is that the document that we came out with, this budget, I do believe really reflects the values of Pennsylvania.
For so much of this debate, conversation for months, and especially through the summer, SEPTA and money for transit was really a big focus, certainly in this area for folks who depend on it, and also in Harrisburg, I know for a lot of Democrats pushing for it. It was taken out of the conversation for this sort of last phase of the negotiations. Do you ultimately think it was the right thing to do to sort of move beyond that and not have that be the sticking point, the breaking point?
Yeah, if there's one thing that I regret that I would say is left undone, it is mass transit funding. Folks in Harrisburg need to understand that Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Agency Authority, SEPTA, is the economic engine for the state. More than 40% of the revenue for the state comes from this region.
So why did it end up not being the deal breaker?
Well, you know, it was known that this was something that my Republican colleagues wanted to deal. They needed to get revenue in the area of skill games. They weren't able to get skill games done, and therefore mass transit wasn't included. But let me be very clear. Mass transit remains at a top priority for our caucus. It is something that we must do. It is not an option for us. And although there is a temporary fix, we cannot, should not, and will not continue to kick the can down the road. It must happen. So
what does this look like next year? Is it just a repeat? Do you have a different approach? Why would it be any different?
We're not gonna let up on our advocacy around mass transit funding and getting folks in other parts of the state to understand why mass transit should be important to them. Listen, folks try to make this an urban versus rural Pennsylvania discussion, but it's not. SEPTA, PRT in the west, LANTA in the northeast, these agencies help with the economy of our Commonwealth. It gets people to work, it gets kids to schools, it gets folks to their doctor's appointments. It is the lifeblood of our economy. And it is that economy that also funds roads and bridges in rural parts of Pennsylvania that many of your viewers will never see. And so we need to continue to do the job of educating folks throughout the Commonwealth and keeping the pressure on those folks who represent those areas to let them know SEPTA is not just about southeastern Pennsylvania. It's not just about folks in Philadelphia and the counties that surround it. But SEPTA, PRT, LANTA, and all of the other transit agencies fuel the economy of this Commonwealth.
You mentioned skill games. That was something, as I talked to people that's regulating these games that people might see in bars or restaurants or corner stores. It is something that, as I talked to your colleagues in Harrisburg, most people I talked to were optimistic that it could get done in terms of regulating that and getting some money from it. But it didn't get done. Why do you think it didn't?
Well, look, skill games is something for us that we waited on the state Senate to send us a bill. There were two revenue generators in the budget. It was the legalization of adult use cannabis and skill games that were part of the governor's proposal. The House passed a legalization of marijuana bill over to the state Senate. They did not take that piece of legislation up, nor did they send us their own. And we're still waiting on them to send us something to regulate skill games. The bottom line for us is that these games are in our communities, and right now they're unregulated and they're untaxed. And that means that there are resources being left on the table that could fund mass transit and could fund other things that we need done in this Commonwealth. So we look forward to the Senate to send us something.
Could you start it in the House?
We look forward to the Senate to send us something.
Why does the Senate have to do it?
Well, because this is what they said they wanted to do, and so we're looking for the state Senate to take up skill games and send us a piece of legislation to deal with it.
Let's go across the aisle now and get the Republican perspective. State Senator Tracy Pennycook represents parts of Berks and Montgomery counties, and she is a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you, Senator.
Thanks for having me.
So there seem to be things people on both sides of the aisle are happy about in this budget bill. Did it have to take this long then, if people are so happy with it?
I think it did have to take this long because I think it took time for people to realize that we were going to be putting our constituents in serious debt if we didn't claw back some money from state agencies from previous budgets where they hadn't spent money, where we had to slash some overspending, if you will. So I think it did take some time, but I think the product is really a good bipartisan product.
We spent a lot of time, and I say we, meaning just the region and the state, spent a lot of time during this process thinking about and talking about transit and SEPTA. You and I talked about it during this process. There was no recurring funding for transit or for SEPTA in this budget, and there was a sort of temporary solution put in place for SEPTA, taking money out of a capital fund during this process. What do you think the future of recurring funding is for SEPTA in Harrisburg?
So I think that you're going to see reoccurring funding either come through skill games or some other initiatives that we're working on that aren't quite ready for prime time. We want to see SEPTA have reoccurring funding, but with that funding also comes the responsibility of operating responsibly and efficiently and using every dollar to the maximum effectiveness possible while keeping their employees safe. That is the number one thing. Their employees and riders have to be safe on SEPTA. So we're continuing to work on funding for SEPTA and the other public transportation systems in Pittsburgh and up in Lehigh Valley. So we're working on it. We didn't get it done in this budget, unfortunately, but we are close. We've got some other solutions that are coming down the pike.
What makes you feel like it could get done? Because there were people who thought it could get done this year.
I never knew skill games could be so complicated, but I now know skill games is very complicated, and there's a lot of different players that are
regulating skill games and getting revenue out of that.
Regulating skill games and taxing skill games. So I think that we're continuing conversations. We're looking at the entire landscape of the video games, online gaming, small games of chance. We're looking at all of that as a mechanism once regulated to put into public transportation. So hopefully that will be a reoccurring funding stream.
Yeah, I mean, why didn't that get done? When I talked I asked the appropriations chair in the House about skill games, and he put it on the Senate that they didn't send anything over. You're in the Senate. Why did the Senate not send anything over?
I think there's 4 at this point different bills regulating and taxing the skill games. And I think the problem is we can't seem to come to an agreement on what each terminal is going to cost, what each operator's license is going to cost, and what the tax rate is. And once we get there, I think we're going to be in a much better position. But you got to remember, a lot of these skill games are in our small fire stations and our nonprofits like the VFW, the American Legion. We don't want to tax those small nonprofits out of existence. We want to make sure that they continue to operate. So we have to look at the whole picture of skill games, not just a terminal in a convenience store. We have to look at also the nonprofit landscape. We have to look at those parlors that want to have 20 or 30 different games in one location. So it's a lot bigger than just quote unquote skill games. It's looking at who has them, where they have them, what is a reasonable registration fee or license fee without, putting people out of business. We don't want to stop small businesses from, using skill games to kind of bring them over the top to profitability. We want to make sure that we're taking care of and protecting our small businesses.
Once you come to an agreement, if you come to an agreement on skill games, do you designate that money for transit and for SEPTA and other transit agencies, or are other interests going to want a piece of that?
That I don't know. It's still a negotiation.
What do you think should happen?
I think it should go not only to SEPTA, but also to roads and bridges. I think that's the reality. It has to be for both. We can't just say it's going to be for public transportation when, 80% of our state doesn't have a public transportation system, but is covered with roads and bridges. So I think it's got to be a balance between public transportation as well as roads and bridges.
We only had a time to bring you a portion of our interviews with Democratic Pennsylvania State Representative Jordan Harris and Republican State Senator Tracy Pennycook, but you can see much more from both conversations on the latest episode of my Battleground Politics podcast. It's streaming right now on NBC10.com, our NBC Philadelphia YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. Still ahead, the Epstein files. Congress has voted for their release and the president signed it. What we can expect to learn from them and the message the vote sent to survivors of sexual assault.
This is NBC 10 at Issue.
This past week, the House and Senate overwhelmingly passed a bill to compel the Justice Department to release the Epstein files. The president signed the bill Wednesday night. A group of bipartisan lawmakers have been pushing for months for the release of all unclassified records tied to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who was awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges when he died by suicide in his jail cell in 2019. Advocates for victims of child sex trafficking also pushed for the release of the files. And joining us now is Marcy Hamilton, the founder and chief visionary officer of Child USA, a think tank focused on child protection policies. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So before we talk about sort of what we could see here, what does it mean that we got to this moment?
Well, it's extraordinary that we were able to get nearly unanimous passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, because usually there are plenty of lawmakers that will drag their feet even through a vote like this. But it took so much work for the survivors and all the people that work with them, the advocates, to be able to get to this moment where the federal government is supposed to release the files.
I know you and I had talked about sort of the significance of this leading up to the vote, not just for those directly impacted by the Epstein case, but by other survivors as well. What are you hearing about what this means for them?
This means the world to survivors across the country and the world, because the message is that the federal government of the United States took the side of the survivors against some of the most powerful people in the world.
How will the public know if there's something missing? If there is a pile of documents released, how does the public know if there's something that's not in there?
Well, the beauty is a lot of these survivors actually were able to file lawsuits against either Epstein and or Maxwell over the years. And also there was a major lawsuit against banks, 2 different banks. Sorry. There was a lawsuit against 2 different banks so far. And so there's a lot of information out there. But we also know that the victims know who abused them, and they know who tried to abuse them, who groomed them. They're going to be able to compare their experience against whatever is released. And so their identifying information cannot be included, so they will be scrubbed for any identifying information about a victim. But that victim will know that what they were talking about in that particular file was this man or that man.
We will be watching to see how this plays out. Marcy Hamilton, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
A group of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell survivors released a statement saying in part, quote, "The passage is momentous, but make no mistake, our fight is far from over. Until the truth is revealed in full, every criminal in Epstein and Maxwell's deeply perverted orbit is held accountable, as well as the government for its negligence. Justice will not have been served," end quote.
Travel tips. If you're hitting the road for the Thanksgiving holiday and you want less stress, we'll tell you the best time to leave to avoid the worst traffic. The busiest holiday for travel is coming up this week. In our area, close to 1 million people will be hitting the roads or the skies, and the number of people traveling is expected to be more than last year. And for more on how travelers can prepare, we are joined by Gina Tidwell from AAA. Welcome, Gina. Great to see you.
Oh, thanks for having me, Lauren.
So let's go over the numbers. What are you expecting in terms of travel this week, and how does that compare to last year?
As you said, there'll be nearly 1 million Philadelphia area residents traveling for the Thanksgiving holiday. That's up a little bit more than 2% year over year. We've seen steady growth year over year since the pandemic. People don't want to miss these opportunities to be with family and friends for the holiday.
People are always trying to strategize. When do I leave? What's the best time? How do I avoid, sitting there in traffic or standing in a security line? What's the best time to leave?
Well, good luck. You will likely hit some traffic, whether you're hitting the roads or headed to the airport. AAA anticipates that Tuesday will be the busiest getaway day on the roads. So if that's your getaway, you want to make sure that you're leaving before that getaway, off-peak hours, early in the morning, like before 10, 11 o'clock, and later in the evening on Tuesday, after the afternoon rush. Those will be the best times on Tuesday. Wednesday, of course, will be a busy getaway day at the airport. A lot of people heeding the advice to take that first flight out in the morning. So you definitely want to get there. We always say 2 hours early for a domestic flight, but now we're recommending 3 hours early for those domestic flights just to be safe.
We obviously saw recently those flight reductions during the government shutdown. Those are over now, but just the fact that that was going on, is that going to impact anything in your estimation in terms of how people handle travel this year, having gone through that and sort of worrying about it?
It could. There could be those air travelers who saw what happened over the last couple of weeks with the flight reductions that said, you know what, we're not even going to chance it. We're just going to plan a road trip. So we could see an increase in road trip travel. We also have air travelers who could say, you know what, you're not going to get me. I'm going to be as prepared as I possibly can. And that's what AAA advises for any air travel trip. Have the plan B. Make sure, that you don't check a bag. Make sure you keep everything with you. Carry on only. Arrive early. Have that plan B, whether it's accommodations, if you have to rent a car, whatever that happens to be, because it's not just a flight reduction that can cause those air travel delays. It could be weather as well. And we're heading into that time of year where winter weather may not be here in Philadelphia, but we don't know where your destination is. If there's snow or any serious weather, that could cause a delay.
Yeah, or where your plane is coming from to get to you. How are prices impacting what people are doing this year? Gas prices, airline fares, how are prices impacting things?
Gas prices are hovering very close to where we were this time last year, so we don't anticipate that gas prices will be a factor in road trips, as just about 90% of local travelers will be taking a road trip for Thanksgiving. Airline tickets are averaging about $700 each. Thanksgiving is one of those holidays where people are willing to spend to go. They will cut back in other areas to be able to be with family and friends. It's a holiday where gift giving is not attached. It's getting together for a meal, so people want to do that.
All right. We'll have to leave it there and wish people luck on their travels. Dana Tidwell from AAA. Thanks so much. And stay with NBC10 for everything you need to know about the upcoming holiday travel season. We'll have updates on the roads, the rails, and the airports, both online and on air. We'll be right back.
This is NBC10 at Issue.
Leaders in one Delaware city are looking to get laws on the books when it comes to electric bikes and scooters. A Wilmington City Council member is pushing a law that sets age limits and helmet requirements for riders based on the power levels of different e-bikes and scooters. At this point, the proposed law does not include any punishments for violators. City leaders say that language could be added later. Wilmington City Council is expected to vote on this the first week of December. That does it for this edition of NBC10 at Issue. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day.